The following is meant for entertainment and educational purposes. It is not meant to establish a doctor-patient relationship. Please consult your mental health provider for your mental health needs. Hello, welcome to Chez Eric, my home, where we talk about psychiatry and religion with a focus on how to apply it to your life. And this is the William James series on the varieties of religious experience. And we'll be continuing with lectures 4 and 5 titled Healthy-Mindedness, and this is part 2. Last time we talked about happiness generally, and what is the relationship between happiness and religion, and then we talked a little bit about what is healthy-mindedness. And healthy-mindedness had this quality of just ignoring all bad things and saying only good things happen, and this is where he wants to start with understanding the religious experience, because being happy in this way, through the healthy-minded way, is actually the simplest form of what we would say religious happiness. So what are the next steps? What is part 2 going to be about? Well, this is going to be somewhat interesting, actually pretty interesting, but a little bit complex, and I'll try to unpack it. William James talks about this idea between once born and twice born people, I guess Christians, right? And at first when I read this, I wasn't sure if it was talking about, born again Christians or something. I'm not sure that's what they're talking about. But he talks about once born versus twice born people, and they are different. And he's going to focus only on the once born, so born once, right? And the way it's described is by Francis W. Newman, paper, where it says, they describe it as the once born people, they see God not as a strict judge, not as a glorious potentate, but as the animating spirit of a beautiful, harmonious world, beneficent and kind, merciful as well as pure. Thus, when they approach God, no inward disturbance ensues, and without being yet spiritual, they have a certain complacency and perhaps romantic sense of excitement in their simple worship. Twice born, on the other hand, is different, but we're not going to get into it. But this idea of the once born is that it's kind of the types of people who would be of the healthy-minded type, with the twice-born people being more of the sick souls type. That is going to be in the next lecture, in lecture 6, the counterpart to healthy-mindedness. So what is this once-born / healthy-mindedness thing? Well, he says that once-born type have a religious attitude, probably comes from, he says, the Roman Catholic Church, more so than Protestantism. Not exactly sure if that's true. Didn't double check that, didn't fact check that, but maybe it's true. But he says, that's what he says. And for the once born people, there is no morbid compunction or crisis. He says everything is like simple and straight and natural. There's no sort of bad stuff happening. There's a bias towards being cheerful, and you should not really linger over negative, pessimistic thoughts for too long. Some might say that this is kind of pathological to just look at only good things, but any temporary sadness or momentary problems is cut off immediately. And how does this look? Well, he uses Walt Whitman as an example of what one would be if they were once born, or how they would be sort of this healthy-minded way. And this is another quote. And this is him describing Walt Whitman. Or actually, he's quoting Dr. Burke describing Walt Whitman. Here it is. So Walt Whitman is described as, until I knew the man, it had not occurred to me that anyone could derive so much absolute happiness from these things as he did. He was very fond of flowers. All natural objects seemed to have a charm for him. I never knew him to argue or dispute. He always justified, sometimes playfully, sometimes quite seriously, those who spoke harshly of himself, of his writings, and I often thought he even took pleasure in the opposition of enemies. All right. So this is dude, Whitman, right, that behaves in this way, that he is just always happy, takes delight in life. And even with people who criticize him, he playfully, talks back with them. And then he even delights, he says, in the opposition of his enemies. When was the last time you saw someone doing that, right? When was the last time you saw a politician doing that, or a leader doing that? Like, oh, look at you, you're criticizing me. That's great, right? And so this is the nature of the once born, the healthy-minded character. And James points out that Walt Whitman's character is expansive in nature, as if nothing was negative. Many would consider him the restorer of natural religion. And so when the Greeks and the Romans had a tendency to keep things either good, good or bad, Walt Whitman would take the stance that good is perfect and bad is also perfect. And if you told that to the Greeks and the Romans, they'd be like, you make absolutely no sense. How could bad be perfect? You're just redonkulous, right? And what's really strange is that, it's not on the one sense, it's not natural, but this is kind of what a lot of people's stances are when it comes to life and in many senses religion. And although William James would say that Whitman's a little bit too extreme, a little bit too bold, he's still an influential character in this understanding of healthy-mindedness. So who was Walt Whitman? So I looked him up really quickly in Wikipedia, and he was alive between 1819 and 1892. And he was an American poet, essayist, and journalist. And he was a part of the transition between, it says, transcendentalism and realism. And it was a movement that believed in the inherent goodness of people and nature. And let me read this. And institutions, but believed that institutions corrupted the purity of the individual. And that people are best when they are truly self-reliant on themselves and independent. Realism itself is a movement that attempts to represent things as they actually are, choosing to pick everyday, boring stuff and activities and experiences instead of romanticized versions of life. So that's just a little background on Walt Whitman. So what are your thoughts, right? What are your thoughts about this character, this individual that's just happy all the time, refuses to hear bad things, refuses to say bad things, refuses to think bad things, I guess loves his enemies or loves criticisms, and just approaches life with this fondness, with this happiness that seems to be almost, like I said, ignoring anything bad. And again, this is what William James would characterize as the once born group of people. And we'll be talking about the twice born in the next lecture, not the next part, in the next lecture. So if you enjoyed that, I hope you did. Do like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye. Hello, I just wanted to take time to say thank you very much for your support. Every little bit counts. And it's a lot to ask to be a part of your life, even if it's just 10 minutes in a day. We're all really busy, and the fact that you're willing to watch the whole video to the end and subscribe and even comment is very encouraging to make this channel grow and grow and grow. I couldn't have done it without you, so thank you very much from the bottom of my heart, or my brain, or my soul, or whatever. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'll see you next time.